So I talk a lot about FG boots and a lot about AG boots and sometimes about SG boots, but there's another important outsole that needs to be mentioned, and that is TF for turf. And in today's video, I'll talk about what I think are the 5 best plus turf boots that you can buy on Unisport in 2025. Let's do it. But before we get started with the list, let me just explain when I think you should use TF or turf shoes. Because while it might make a lot of sense, like instinctively, on when you should use AG boots, I mean, if you play on a good modern artificial grass pitch, an AG boot is a great option. But what about turf? Well, for me at least, if you play on a slightly older, more worn down, or really rough artificial grass pitch, it's not a bad option. But even if you play on gravel or a dirt pitch, or just even a really dry, slightly worn down natural grass pitch, it might not be a bad idea to have a think about using a turf shoe. In general, I always say that if the pitch is rough or shallow, you know, the grass is short, using a turf shoe that has a lot of little studs that really spreads out the pressure very nicely and also a little bit of midsole cushioning is a really good idea. And typically I would say that if you play on an artificial pitch where the studs really can't penetrate the surface, a turf shoe is a good shout. Or, you know, if you just want to minimize the risk of knee injuries, a turf shoe is a good shout. If you just want it slightly more mellow on the outsole with a little bit of comfort from your cushioning, well, the turf shoe is a good shout. Or you just want something that is, like, to really take a beating, well, a turf shoe is a good shout. So I think you know what I mean. And now we can start my top 5 list with the Nike Phantom 6 Pro Low TF. Yes, it's a very long name, but actually I'll begin with, not really talking about it, because in my book, this just edges out the Predator Pro TF in 5th place. Don't get me wrong, this is a very solid shoe. Hypertouch 2.0 upper, really soft and supple. You get the Strike Skin SR rubber fins, really lovely. From a traction point of view, the outsole's actually solid. It's on the stiffer side, and Light Strike foam, it's nice enough, but it's a little bit firm. Plus, for me, the heel, while it does an okay job, it also feels a little bit chunky, and it doesn't give me the lock-in that I necessarily want. Neither does the Phantom 6, but to me, it's just a better package overall, especially because of the heel, but also because of the Venom Skin upper. It's so soft and pliable that it just fits. Obviously, it's really thin. You get a very nice sharp touch on the ball. There's lots of texture, lots of grip on the ball, and it just feels very natural. And speaking of natural, it's probably also a slightly more football boot-like feeling, because the midsole cushioning is well, there isn't much here, which will split opinion, but I personally don't mind that you're a little bit closer to the ground. The outsole itself is also, it's got a great balance between slightly larger conical studs here that pivot really well in ground, and then these many little studs that give just the right amount of traction when you want to push off. Again, great balance, and for me, when we're talking control turf shoes, just a slightly better package than the Preds. But it all comes down to your personal preference, to be fair. But actually, I like another one of Nike's Pro shoes a little bit better, and that is the Tiempo Legend 10 Pro TF, which, it's actually really solid. What you get here is the FlyTouch Pro upper, which is not quite the same as the FlyTouch Plus that you get on the Tiempo Legend 10 Elite, but it is, it's very similar and still lovely, really soft and supple. It's got a great balance between being a little bit padded where you feel enough of the ball, it's got a bit of micro texturing on, has a nice matte, like sticky sensation to it that's not too much either, so feels great on the ball. Fit overall, in general, is relatively accommodating for, I would say, most feet. But the outsole, guys, the outsole to me is fantastic. So it's got these little almost like suction cup studs that have really they're put out in this grid-like pattern that means that the forefoot is extremely flexible. So no matter how you put your foot down on the ground, you just get the sensation that there's always the maximum amount of studs in contact with the ground, giving you the grip that you want, but without being sticky. So the release on this stud pattern is absolutely fantastic. It feels effective, but at the same time also safe. And with a cheeky bit of foam here in the midsole, it's not too thick, so you get that little bit of cushioning, but it still feels somewhat like a football boot. It's a really good little package here. It's not like the X Factor, like, wow, but it just works. And that all said that. And what also works well is the Adidas Mundial Team TF, which is the granddaddy of turf shoes and obviously the turf version of the Adidas Copa Mundial. And that also means that, of course, you get a really nice, very soft leather upper that, when broken in, is seriously comfortable. But of course, to make it a little bit more durable, it has a slightly higher toe bumper here, rubber, and a suede piece to just ensure that the upper doesn't split. It's really nice, it's really durable, it just works. And obviously, yeah, it's a little bit chunkier than some of the other shoes on the list, but it's also one of the most stable, meaning that it's comfortable and it just feels like, honestly, you can go to war in these. They just rock solid. The outsole does its job really well. Midsole is on the firmer side, but it is what it is. It's just one of those all-rounders that, you know, it can take a beating. But the problem is, for the Mundial team, is that it's 150 euros. Now, I also have this with me, the Nike Premier 3 TF, which is 95 euros, and in my book, one of the best value for money turf shoes you can get. What's really good about this is that you also get a super soft and supple cowl leather upper, suede toe bumper here, higher toe lip, really durable. I mean, these two can take a legit ass kicking and just still hold up. They just still work. Very comfortable, super stable, but what I like about the Premier is that it has this really nice suede liner in the heel compared to the more slippery material in the Mundial team. So it just gives a slightly more, you know, grippy, locked-in sensation because of that. And then, of course, the Lunar Lawn midsole here is absolutely goated. It has this sweet balance between feeling comfort and comfort. It's comfortable and cushioned and just a little bit of like responsiveness, springiness to it as well. Outsole in general does a good job, does what it's supposed to, and I feel like it's performing and I still feel safe. And genuinely, these two shoes, they're just workhorses. They just do. So you can chuck them at a good 4G artificial grass pitch or a gravel pitch. They don't care. They just work. Top choices, really. Especially, I mean, 95 euros. And for second place, I brought the new Balance Furon V8 Elite TF, which... What a shoe, guys. Definitely more football boot-like as well. But what I really love here is that it uses the same hypo-knit upper as the Elite FG version, which is just ridiculously soft. And you can just throw whatever foot shape added. My relatively slim foot, a slightly wider foot, it doesn't matter because the upper is so soft and so accommodating that it just fits. And what I also really love is the fit in the heel, because the lock-in, the pinch you get right here on the top of the heel, ensures that it just locks the heel so nicely in place and actually eliminates a lot of the foot movement right back here, which to me, when you play on an artificial or especially a turf pitch, it just is vital to ensure that there's as little movement inside of the shoe as possible. When you put your foot down, the shoe doesn't really move as much as it would on an FG pitch. So for you to actually really have a good lock-in, good lockdown, is, to me, just makes the shoe feel a lot better. What I also love is the fuel cell foam here. Just like the Legend, it has that really good balance of feeling slightly bouncy, but also being low enough and responsive enough to feel at least a little bit more like the actual football boot. And I'm not sure it says Vibram anymore on the outsole, but it's the same outsole as the previous generations, which is really nice if you like that slightly more aggressive, responsive feel as well. And again, coming from being an 11-a-side FG, AG player typically, I just like that sort of shoe in, or that feel in my turf shoes as well. Will it be for everyone? Maybe not, but if you're into that whole football booty vibe, it's great. Also, shout out, of course, to the 442 V2 Pro TF, which, if the Premier is a little bit too chunky for you, this is like a great middle ground. Same outsole as well. Great. And finally, my favorite option, the Mizuno Morelia Sala Elite TF. But wait a minute, Jay, Sala? That's indoors, no? And yeah, this is technically Mizuno's Morelia indoor shoe, just with a turf outsole slapped on. And that's cool because the Morelia Sala is a great shoe. And so is this. Now, we're back though in the slightly more sturdy territory. We have that suede bumper, we have the really high toe lift, which means that it's just a tank. You can legitimately take it to war and it's just gonna last you, which is very nice, of course. You have this amazing, amazing leather upper, which is one of the absolute best. You don't even really need to break it in for it to feel comfortable, but obviously, as you do, it's just like next level comfort. In terms of midfoot lockdown, you have a really deep lacing system here that's got great adjustment options, great midfoot lockdown. Heel, maybe the suede line or the foam package could have been a little bit better, more premium, but it's still good enough in terms of giving you a nicely enveloping feeling, great heel lockdown as well. And then, of course, the outsole here. Mizuno's Energy Foam is probably on the level of Nike Lunarlon in terms of giving that really lovely, bouncy, but still performance-oriented sensation. And this turf outsole here is just phenomenal. The forefoot is so flexible, and the pattern, the stop pattern they put on here is very nicely balanced. It's really grippy, has great traction, but again, with the balance where I feel safe, and I just trust it to give me the exact amount of grip that I need. The release is phenomenal, and while it's definitely on the more smooth, mellow side, it probably wouldn't be the most aggressive on a 4G AG pitch, but if you take it on an actual worn down artificial grass pitch or a turf pitch, I mean, it eats those pitches for breakfast, this, and it's just a monster of a turf shoe. Honestly, it doesn't get much better than this. It will last you a lifetime. So in other words, that leaves us with a bit of variety on the list. And in terms of finding out what's best for you, I think it really comes down to what you're looking for in a turf shoe. Do you want something that's a little bit more football boot-like? Or are you looking for something that's a little bit more sturdy and can withstand the abrasion from a turf pitch? That's basically up for you to decide. Just remember that in terms of injury prevention, nothing is safer than a turf outsole, whether you play on FG, but especially on artificial grass. And sure, it might not be the most aggressive, responsive thing when you play on a good modern AG pitch or a firm ground pitch, but in terms of preventing those nasty twists in your joints and your knees, it doesn't get safer than this. It's not for nothing that they call these the old men shoes, because it's just, yeah. It is what it is. Obviously, if you want to buy any of these or another turf boot, well, you can get everything you need in the link to Unisport right over there. Of course, like and subscribe and all that jazz. And with those words, I'll be signing off. Cheerio. Yeah, my voice has been epic today. I have something in my throat, so it's just been really... Gotta do some voiceovers this is the journey of a young boomer looking to find turf shoes. Coming to theaters, whatever.